welcome everybody to the Musicians and Pastors Forum Part 2 tonight. I am excited because I know that what is going to take place tonight is going to help a boatload of people, my goodness, from across this country. So with that being said, if you could do me a favor, like my brother Wendell Craig Woods is doing in the chat now, tag your pastor, tag your minister of music, tag those in your church who are responsible for hiring people in the area of worship arts. Amen. Because if your church is having issues, or if you've had issues in the past, or you want to do a better job in the future, this broadcast is going to help you in one way or another. And so I thank God for this opportunity, for this open door. Amen. By way of social media, to help people from all across the world. Our issues are many, but they can't get solved by one meeting. It takes a platform like social media, where people can like and share and watch later and get information to get the ball started, so that God can truly be glorified in our music ministries. And that's all of our, that's all we want. We want God to get the glory. We don't want any obstacles and any hindrances to be in the way of God being glorified. And so many times, the things that happen in the back room, amen, affect the things in the front. Amen. And so tonight, my guest is none other than Dr. Tony McNeill. My goodness, I have watched him down through the years, and I have admired him. I have respected his work. He is a man of God and a man of great knowledge and wisdom. He is a workshop clinician. He is a lecturer. He's a consultant. He's a mentor and choral conductor. He currently serves as an affiliate professor of worship and seminary musician at Columbia Theological Seminary in Decatur, Georgia. He has his bachelor's degree in music education from Appalachian State University. He has his master's degree in choral conducting from Florida State University, and he has his doctorate of worship studies from the Robert Weber Institute for Worship Studies in Jacksonville, Florida. So you know he comes ready, armed, and ready to help us all tonight. So I wanted to play videos and things to get you all going, to get you tagging folks so they can come on in and be a part of this conversation. Will you please welcome to this platform, if you're a part of the Hymns family, welcome Dr. Tony McNeill. For all of you all who are tuning in, let's welcome him. And please put your questions in the chat, but be attentive. Let's pay attention to what he has to say to us tonight. Dr. McNeill, thank you so much for joining us. I really, really appreciate it. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me, Philip. I'm excited to be here tonight to have this important conversation with you and your community. So thank
Amen.
you for being open to this discussion.
Yeah. Well, let's get right down to it. My first question to you is, what led you down the path of consulting and helping ministries as it pertains to worship arts?
Well, I first started dabbling in consulting and doing worship job referrals. Man, it was in the early 2000s, early to mid 2000s, where I developed a website back in the day called The Call to Worship.
Wow.
And it was a pretty robust resource specifically for church musicians to come to for encouragement, for information, for education, for edification, for connection, for wisdom, and to find out what's going on in other local church spaces. At that time, I felt like there was not a central place, especially for worship leaders and musicians of color, working in the Black church, doing the work of ministry, worship ministry in Black faith spaces. And
Mm.
so I created this website that not only gave information about workshops and concerts and um, continuing education opportunities for worship leaders, but also was a central place for um, jobs, for people to find out churches who were looking for music ministers or musicians, and it was a place for ministers of music or musicians who were looking for churches. So
Mm-hmm.
I connected the two, churches that were looking and ministers of music that were looking, in hopes that each would find a home, or find what they need for any particular time. So it grew out of that,
Mm-hmm.
and my presence at various workshops and the work that I've done inside the academy and in music ministry full time, all have converged to enhance what I do as a consultant and as a mentor, as a conversation partner with churches and with individuals.
Great, great. And tonight, everybody, we're talking about effective, and he put an N in parentheses, ineffective protocols for worship, for recruiting, hiring, and applying for worship's arts job. Which leads me to my second question: what do you see as the biggest disconnect, especially as it pertains to you and I? We spent a majority of our life in the African American church. What do you see as the biggest disconnect when it comes to hiring protocols?
Philip, one of the common threads, unfortunately, that happens a lot of times when I get calls from pastors or HR directors, is that a lot of our churches hire out of frustration and
Mm,
desperation,
yeah.
as opposed to hiring from a place of intentionality and reflection.
Mm,
Um, a lot of times the bottom has dropped out of the music or worship ministry, and pastors are in a hurry, or search committees are in a hurry to find somebody fast to keep things going. Uh, that is a major problem, and part of the work that I do is to find out what's going on, to kind of still the storm, if you will, so that that kind of deep intentional thinking and reflection can take place, so that churches are clear about what it is that they want and who it is that they want, uh,
right.
to fill a particular position. It's very important that when a church finds itself in need of worship leadership, that they take the time to understand what it is that they need versus what it is that they want. There is a difference. What it is that they need versus what it is that they want. And many times that is dictated by what it is that they can afford.
Mm,
Okay. What it is that we need, what they need versus what it is that they want. Also in tension with what it is that you can afford. That will determine the parameters of the job description and the reality of the job description. But a lot of times we don't make the time to sit down to reflect and ask ourselves those important questions, which can save us a lot of pain and heartache in the future. So I come in as a consultant to help gauge those questions, to help churches take a inventory of who they
hmm
are, where they are, and
right.
where it is that they want to go. Yeah, so those guiding questions can be very, very helpful and in moving forward in a search.
So these protocols that we're going to talk about, some of them that we're going to discuss tonight, are they for large and smaller environments?
Yeah, they're applicable, for churches of all sizes. I find again, Philip, that I don't like gauging these positions by attendance, because there are some small churches with bigger budgets than big churches with large attendance.
Right.
And so, again, it's grounded in the values that a congregation or a senior pastor has in terms of its worship and its music. And
Mhm.
I guarantee you, if there is a great value on worship, a great value on music ministry, it's going to be reflected in the church budget. And so part of that conversation is, having asking churches, you say you want this particular kind of leader in a worship pastor or a minister of music, but does your budget support this idealistic person that you want to hire? And so, and if it doesn't, it's okay. And so we have to have those kinds of conversations to make sure the job description fits the reality of where the budget is and where the values of the church are. Because a
Right.
church can have some fantastic values, but if the budget does not meet those values, then that's a conversation that has to be had.
Right. And then there's the conversation of what do we need to prepare for?
Absolutely.
It's almost like that conversation is not had, and then you're shocked when you find out just how much it may cost to get the person that you have described that you wanted on paper or either orally.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, that can be determined by bringing someone in like myself, or like
Right.
you, or like Chad Brawley, um, uh, Professor Omar Dickinson, Rodney Whitley. There are tons of folks that are out there. Wendell Woods, that's here in the chat, and there are others that can help guide churches through these conversations that, again, sometimes get distorted because they're a lot of times in panic mode. Um,
Mhm.
but understanding what it is that the congregation values, what is the pastor's vision for worship? That's one of the questions I like to ask. And sometimes they have one, and sometimes they don't.
Right.
What is the congregation's vision or mission for worship? It's good that a lot of churches have vision and mission statements for the church overall, but I also like to press churches and pastors to have a vision and mission statement for worship.
Right.
Okay? And that could be one or two sentences that encapsulates what's important for that particular faith community when it comes to worship. And so that becomes the benchmark of
Right.
the standard bearer for what it is that your church desires, what it values, and what it will take to move the ministry forward.
You're already in it, man. You're already in it, and there are other people, yes, who do consulting, but I want to, but you're my guest tonight, and I want pastors to know potential. If you're in a situation, and hopefully you're in a situation where it's not desperate, but you're looking in the future to hire somebody, and you need some counsel. I want to recommend Dr. Tony McNeill to you. I will provide his information in the chat and on the screen as we continue on in this conversation about hiring protocols. My goodness. Let's get into a job description. And the first thing pops in my mind is that I think that people need to know leadership when you make your job descriptions, and I'll turn it over to you. But this is just something that I think we need to clarify. Leaders, when you're doing job descriptions, pastors, when you're doing job descriptions, or if you have a music committee, the first thing you put on your job description, I notice, is you want the person to have a relationship with Jesus Christ, or to be saved, or to be filled with the Holy Ghost. But I need to let you know that that is not a guarantee that it's going to work.
Yeah. And the other thing about that is, how do you evaluate that?
Right, right, right.
And people can say that, they're saved and filled with the Holy Ghost and
Right.
committed to Christ and all. You, there's no way to evaluate that. The only way you could possibly get close to evaluating that is spending time with people.
That's correct.
Okay, people lie well. People give fake information and tell you what you want to know when you want to know it, especially if they're desperate for a job or desperate to be hired. um, you know Everybody that plays an instrument does not necessarily need to be in leadership. And that's
Right.
another, I think, misconception that a lot of churches have, is that if somebody is gifted to play an instrument, that they are automatically gifted to be in leadership. Some people are just gifted to play and should
That's
not be
correct.
standing in front of a choir teaching parts, should not be trying to organize or be an administrator for a worship department, but their gifting is just playing. And if that is their gifting, that's fine. But
Right.
being able to assess that, and musicians being honest about
Right.
their capacity. If sitting behind the keyboard or teaching parts or standing in front of the choir directing is where your giftedness is, be honest about that. Okay?
Right.
And don't just accept the job, just assuming that, knowing or knowing internally that, what, I'm not that great of an administrator, or I'm not that great of a communicator,
Hmm.
or I don't like people.
Come on, that's it right there.
Okay. But I like to play,
I don't like people though.
or I like to, teach parts, but I don't like people. I don't like interacting with people. Then you probably shouldn't apply for the minister of music position. You know, um, based on the job descriptions. So a lot of it has to also do with musicians and those that
Mhm.
are applying for the job being
Right.
honest about their capacity. Okay.
But then there's the other side of that. There is the pastor or the person that's hiring, and they see your talent or gift, and they ignore what what your weekend hire you anyway, and you end up doing some harm to the music ministry.
Yeah, that's just as bad. That's just as bad. But and a lot of times, congregations, pastors, HR committees, they will put up with stuff just for the sake of having somebody sitting on the piano bench or the organ bench.
Hmm.
And oftentimes, they allow people to stay longer than they really need to.
Lord have mercy.
And the one thing that I hope our churches, especially Black churches, will not be afraid of is, you know, having Sundays or a series of Sundays where you don't have music.
Mm.
Uh, and there was a time in the life of Black faith where the lack of accompaniment was the thing.
Mm.
And it did not stifle the quality of worship. But I think, and I say that because some churches are so scared to have a Sunday where there's no musician, where
Mm.
there's nobody on the piano and nobody on the Hammond. But you might have to have a season of that, or you have an alternative means of providing accompaniment in your church for a season until you can find the right person.
Mm.
And we have to be brave enough to enter into those seasons if it's necessary.
That's
If
heavy.
the church is as committed to excellence as they say they are you willing to go a few Sundays without music?
Wow. That's heavy. You
And
just you just took the lid off the can.
and,
That's
and
heavy.
yeah, and do we trust the Spirit enough? Will
Come
the
on,
Spirit
somebody.
still move in
Wow.
your worship service if you don't have anybody on that Hammond B3?
Wow. Wow.
So those are the kinds of things that I think churches have to be brave enough to say and own and commit to, so that they are not don't have a sense of being rushed and hurried and settling. Okay, settling just for a human for a warm body that comes through the door that says I can play in C, F, and B flat on Easter.
Mm-hmm. And we need to get into hiring protocols. I want to make sure we do what we say we're going to do. But just in tagging off what you said, I have found the reason why most churches would not take your suggestion of going a few Sundays without musicians is a selfish reason. Most pastors I know will slip up and say every now and then that music that I need to be inspired, or music inspires me. It's not really about the church. I need a musician, to perform a work or service for me before I preach. And so I find that's a great, that's an area that many people don't talk about, but I've run across it many times.
Yeah, and I know pastors who are like that.
Yeah.
They like the music to be underpinning their sermon,
Right.
and they see music ministry as a helps ministry. I call that
Right.
that it helps them, become centered into the preaching moment. And yes, music can facilitate in that way, but it should not be just viewed as something that helps the congregation or that helps the pastor get to something else.
Right.
Music ministry in itself is proclamation.
That's
Okay?
correct.
Worship
That's
in
correct.
itself is a form of proclamation.
Right.
Preaching is a form of proclamation. It all serves to the greater good of glorifying God and and bringing the community together in the presence of God, so that the congregation can communicate and experience the presence to the fullness, and not just serve the need of a person
That's correct.
as their helps ministry. And the other part of that is, if hopefully the pastor will enter into the worship celebration already done his or her work, so that even if the music fails, the
Yes.
word will still go forth in a mighty way.
Right.
And so I cringe a little bit when pastors lean so heavily on music to inspire them. So my question is, did you do your homework? Did
Right.
you do your exegesis and do your necessary work, so that if the music fails, because there will be some Sundays when it fails.
Correct.
Okay. There will be some Sundays when those sermons fail.
That's
And the
correct.
music will have to preach the service.
That's correct.
Okay? And so it's not a either or one is greater or lesser than the other, but what is it like to see both as important, both as forms of proclamation, and not just one helping the other be greater than the other?
That's correct. That is you dead on. And people are responding in the chat. Thank you all for responding. I know that you all are asking your questions, and we're going to get to them. But I do want to make a comment from Sean Xavier Jones. He says, many are addicted to noise and allergic to silence.
Yes.
Balance is needed. That's a
Absolutely.
great comment.
Yeah, silence is a scary thing, especially in Black church, because we're so praise driven, we're so noise driven, like he just alluded to. But if we ever decided to recover the sanctity and divinity of silence, those can be moments where the Spirit can come in just as much as a noisy praise break.
Right.
And so having Sundays where we get back to hearing our natural voices a little bit better, you shouldn't be scared of that.
That's amazing, man. You have opened up our eyes tonight and our ears, and I pray that our hearts are open to what you're saying. Well, are you ready to get into? I want to get into job description.
Okay.
So I'm a church, and I'm looking for, and let me just let me just also put in context. This conversation also applies to people who play other instruments in the
Okay.
church as well. So drummer. So I'm looking for. Let's just go top of line. I'm looking for a minister of music, director of music, head of worship arts. What are the components of that job description, and what should I leave out?
Well, the first thing that I like to ask, number one, is there a job description? Because a lot of times when I get calls
Mm-hmm.
or inquiries about consulting, when I say the word job description, uh, I can I can hear the loud silence on the other
Mm-hmm.
end of the
Mm-hmm.
phone,
Mm-hmm.
or
Yep.
I can see it in the Zoom conversation, that churches, some folks, but there are others that many that do have it, but for those that don't, just the reality that, you mean I need to have something in writing? Why can't you just call somebody, and that
Right.
in those situations, the assumption is that all music ministers and all worship directors, or all choir directors, or all drummers, or all bass players are the same.
Right.
They're not. And just as pastors uh, differ in their approach and in their methodology for preaching and studying and delivering the word, so are worship creatives. That we are different and diverse. So churches need to be committed and not see crafting the job description as something that is stifling or something that is difficult. It's not. It's necessary. And especially in this day and age, when people lie so well and can
Mm-hmm.
do it so quickly,
Right.
you need some parameters that describe where you are, what you need, okay, and it's just very helpful for both sides. Okay, it creates an accountability factor for the church and for the person applying for the job. So
Mm.
the job description, number one, even if it's just a rough outline, have something in writing. And the more specific you are, the better. Okay. Um, in the job description, uh, don't just talk about the qualifications and the responsibilities. Yes, those things are necessary. Okay. But also provide a small paragraph about, just in general, what the church is like. Who are you? Okay. What are your values? What is your church's mission statement or vision statement? Some type of summary about that. Uh, your social media handles. People in this day and age, one of the first things we do is go to people's Facebook page or Instagram accounts or YouTube channels just to see what's going on and who they are and what they have to offer. The same thing for churches. Having that key information as a part of the job description in a prominent place in the job description would be very, very critical for someone that is looking, to apply for a particular job. But also that you have clear, bulleted, short sentence fragments that are concise but yet accurate to the reality of the ministry as it is at the time that that job description is written. A lot of times job descriptions are written for what the church would like in the future, and I think that's important. But also don't forget about the reality of where you are at the time that you're writing the job description. Okay. And being very honest about the capacity that the church has currently, as well as pointing to the future of where you'd like to go. Um, it's very disheartening to paint this picture of of a particular church or faith, a worship situation or worship environment that does not match the reality of the environment when a person or a candidate walks in. So make sure you have a good grasp of where your worship ministry is presently and be honest about it. Okay. People appreciate honesty, and and also point to, where it is that you'd like to go. The other thing that I would say that is very, very critical is think about what it is that you would like to get from any particular candidate that is interested in applying. Do you want a resume? Do you want a cover letter and a resume? Do you want a resume and a statement of faith, or a philosophy of worship, or somebody's um, um, statement on why music ministry is important in the church? I'm finding more and more that churches like writing samples. Number one, it not only gives you an idea of the communication capacity of the candidate, but it also gives you insight on what people believe, and what inspires their leadership. Um, yeah, so folks are asking for, a 1 page or 2 page summary of, tell us what your philosophy of corporate worship is, or what inspires or what informs your theology of worship. I think that's a good thing, to get people to be able to articulate that in a 1 or 2 page essay. I think is very good. Yeah, so decide what materials you want. Cover letter, resume, a statement, and nowadays people are wanting video clips. Links to your YouTube channel, or links to videos that demonstrate your capacity, or demonstrates the capacities that you have outlined in your resume. Does the resume match what people are seeing in the video? Or does the resume match what we see in the live interview or the live audition, should the candidate get to that stage in the interview? I've had many churches to call to say, they got these resumes and it had all these glowing qualifications and experience, and all these accomplishments represented on the page. But when they put the candidate in front of the choir, or when the candidate sat down at the piano bench, it did not match. Okay, so having a clear um, uh, picture or understanding of what evaluation components that you would like to see up front, and then for candidates who move beyond that, you have to determine how many levels of evaluation and critique and interview that you'd like to have before you make your final decision. And that will vary from church to church. Some churches can afford to do extended searches, and others cannot. But to not do some type of due diligence in evaluating um, artistry, or the performance part of doing the job, as well as the theological and philosophical, they are both important. So you have to come up with measures of how to do that. And part of the work that I do is to try to create those modules, or those methodologies for evaluating the philosophical and the theological up against the performative and the artistic.
That is amazing, and thank you for that wealth of knowledge and information. And you all want to reach Dr. Tony McNeill. I have put his information, both his social media handles, and if you wish to hire him as a consultant to help you navigate that process, I promise you, you will not be disappointed. How do you, when it comes to character references for a musician or a minister of music, whose references mean the most to you, or what are you looking for?
Um, and that's going to that's going to vary from committee to committee and from church to church.
Mm-hmm.
Some churches call me, and I don't necessarily agree with this, but sometimes it's necessary, I guess. And they do what I call silent searches, where they have someone currently in the position who doesn't know, and that person is not aware that there is a search going on for that job. I don't necessarily like those because if you did it to them, you'll probably do it again to somebody else. But sometimes churches do that. Um, but I tend to gravitate more to public searches. Those tend to be a little bit more ethical and straightforward. But yeah, so remind me what your question was.
The question was when it comes to character reference. So let's say you're evaluating. Okay,
yeah. Okay, I got you. And so it will vary from committee to committee and church to church. Some churches, if it is a public a search, would want to speak with someone at their current church, or may watch a video of that person leading worship, or maybe send a committee member to as a mystery worshiper, if you will. They will look for names that people drop, name dropping that may happen, in a resume that says, I sang with Wendell Woods in Houston, Texas for 30 years. And if Wendell is not listed as a reference, but they allude to it somewhere, if somebody on the committee says, you know what, I know Wendell, I'm going to call Wendell. And I do know, I have worked with churches who also have done reference checks for people not named on the reference list based on their experience and where they've been. Sometimes they will do cold calls to places and references that are not named.
So now I'm going to, this is a random question. I'm seeking your opinion. I am currently, and this is the truth. I am currently helping a church find their new minister or director of music. The previous director did mental harm to the music ministry. Am I looking for a different kind of person to come in after him? In terms of, do they need other skills besides just the ability to teach, play, and sing?
I think for that particular scenario, Philip, I think the church needs to be very honest about where that worship ministry is for any candidate, regardless of what skill set that they bring. The honesty of where the music, that's why I was saying you have to be real about where the ministry is at the present. Okay, and not just harken on, well, back in our heyday, we had 10 choirs, but now you have half of one.
Right.
You know what I mean? So let's talk about the reality of that. And if the worship ministry is in a place of disrepair, of harm, where harm has been done, and there's a lot of TLC that's needed, a lot of teaching and affirmation and love and forgiveness, that you need to be honest about that.
But is that coming from the pastor, or is that coming from the new hire?
It's coming from both. I think it should be something that the church should just automatically make known. They should disclose that. Okay. And as a candidate, I would ask that, what is the current spiritual or, mental or whatever state, emotional state, of the worship ministry? Are people committed? Are people energized? Are people in a space where they want to serve? Or are people in a rebellious state? Or are people in a state where they're not ready to receive a new leader? The pastor may be ready for somebody. Okay.
Come on.
But the people may not. Lord
have mercy.
Okay. I've been in situations like that where the pastor paints this picture like, oh, the people gonna love you, and and I've seen it done to many of my colleagues, and the people were not ready.
Wow.
And so as a candidate, I would ask that to the pastor or to the committee, are the people in a posture of readiness for new leadership? And if not, then that's part of the due diligence that the host church or the hiring church probably needs to take on.
Wow.
To ready the people to receive a new leader. So
Right.
what's the use of bringing someone into a toxic situation
Come on.
and expecting them to heal hurt and harm and trauma that they did not cause?
Right.
And not just think that he's a good choir director and he can play the Hammond organ real good and that'll fix everything. So maybe there's some, I saw somebody type in the word healing. Maybe there's some healing. Maybe there's some counseling, some communal counseling, some communal healing that needs to transpire, maybe even before you post that job description.
So as a consultant, because I serve as a consultant too. This is from consultant to consultant. Do you see that as part of my job to help them to ready for the next person? Like literally, I go in and do some work with the people.
That can be, depending on the nature of your relationship with the pastor and with the people of a particular church, and they trust you enough,
right,
to help them.
Right.
Okay.
That's powerful.
I don't take for granted that, especially as an outsider, not knowing the particulars of the politics. Okay, that's very real.
Right.
And any other, all the emotional harm that may have taken place that you don't have any context for.
Right.
Okay. And so you have to assess that. And if you feel like it's beyond, what you are capable of doing, that may be some pastoral work that needs to happen outside of the realm of your responsibility as a consultant.
Man, you helped us, you helped me. Is there anything else? I mean, because there are many roads I could take, but is there anything else pertaining to what this topic is tonight that you need to cover before we start taking questions or anything like that for our last couple of minutes?
Yeah, I'm grateful for you. Thank you for creating space for this time, and I hope what's said in this broadcast and questions that people will ask will be a benefit to those that are here now and those that will watch later. I just hope that folks know. Please know that there are folks like myself, like Philip, like Wendell, like so many others that are out here that want to see the local church win, that want to see excellence in our worship ministries, regardless of the church size or structure or budget. Okay, call us and don't feel like you're in this thing by yourself. Okay, and if I can't help, I don't have any problems referring you to Wendell, to Philip, to Omar, to Rodney Whitley, to Chad Brawley, to any number of folks. Prince Yelder, I see in the chat, is another wonderful consultant and musician who has been in the life of the church for many, many, many years. Dr. Leo Davis in Memphis, Tennessee, and so many others. But don't feel like you have to figure this thing out on your own. Call us. We'll be more than happy to help you.
And I want to tell you, when you have a consultant, you're not paying twice, you're paying once.
Absolutely.
You pay twice once the situation goes bad.
Yeah.
I think they look at it like, I got to pay a consultant and I got to pay. No, you paying once. Yeah. You're going to get it right this time. And then that will, create a pathway for the future as well.
Absolutely.
If you have any questions, go ahead and put it in the chat. There were some people who had questions earlier. I couldn't see them then, but go ahead and put them back in the chat. And we'll spend our last 9 or 10 minutes maybe addressing some specific questions that you may have. Type in only one. I want to thank God I saw Dr. Martha Simmons in here tonight. Of course, Wendell has just been golden for us, and Dr. Prince Yelder, of course. I'm going to be having him on as well too.
Yeah.
When he come on, he gonna preach and teach.
Oh, yeah. He's amazing. He's amazing.
And I want to shout out to Dr. Weeda Harding, who came in last month to really set the
Yes.
course of action.
Absolutely.
And I want to let y'all know that this is something I'm going to continue on once every month, because my goal is to help and to heal and to solve pockets of misinformation, and use people like Dr. Tony McNeill, who will put out publications to help and expose those things to you, so you don't have to worry about not knowing or taking guesses or just doing things out of desperation, but you'll have stuff in front of you. And I think that this is the time in our world and in this season to do that, especially those of you all who are just coming in to pastoral situations or just coming into leadership. Please take heed to what you hear tonight. I want to also shout out Dr. McNeill. He's also helping in his consultation. I saw an interview he did last week with a pastor actually in my area in Wheaton, Maryland. He's helping to humanize the potential job situation for somebody. Brought the pastor on and played some clips from the choir. They talked about the job description. We got a chance to hear the pastor's heart. Dr. McNeill, how did you come to that?
Well, it was just an idea that came to me. Spirit gave it to me about, what would it look like to, as you said so beautifully in the green room, to humanize the job. Okay. Right. To meet the pastor or to meet the committee chair, search committee chair, and just hear the heart of a representative from the congregation. It means something totally different when you hear from a person. That's a different kind of interpretation of the job description. And, hearing clips of the choir, seeing pictures of the people, it invites you into the life of the church even before you meet the people. You can go to social media and YouTube channel and learn about churches too, but hearing from a human being about the job and hearing those unwritten things that are not in the job description that are important to the job. That's a lot of why I wanted to do the live interview, so that they could bring those kinds of things out that aren't necessarily captured in the job description, but are very much a part of what it means to work in that particular context.
Yeah, and whether your job and whether your search is national or local, I think it's a great idea to take Dr. McNeill up on that offer. Now, somebody asked a random question, and this is up to you whether you want to take it or not. It says, "What can one do to help motivate your musician who has demonstrated their lack of passion for music ministry?"
Wow.
Do we
see again, this is where a job description can come in handy as an evaluation tool. Okay. Job descriptions, and this is another thing where especially Black churches struggle in this area. The evaluation of positions. Okay. It's one thing to hire, recruit and hire somebody, but after a year, 6 months, 90 days, whatever the increments may be, that we have consistent practices of evaluation, coming back to the table, and looking at the job description in which a person was hired as a guidepost for the evaluation. And so I get a lot of calls and people asking, "Dr. McNeill, do you have an instrument, a rubric that I can use to evaluate my staff musicians?" Their job descriptions. Okay, are they meeting the criteria set forth in the job description? That's how you evaluate a position. You put the performance of the musician or the music minister or whoever it is up against the job description that they were brought under or that they're being currently governed under. And so it's not only your job description, but it's also your evaluation tool.
Do
Does
you?
that make sense?
It makes sense. Do you find that churches, after a certain period of time, need to, as things evolve, as time passes, do you think churches need to update their job descriptions?
Absolutely. And the evaluation time is the
Mm-hmm.
time to do that, or to at least talk about, okay, you've excelled in these areas. These areas need improvement, maybe some coaching, and these areas are deficient, or whatever your barometer for measuring and evaluating. And then at that time, you come up with a plan for the next 90 days or year, and in that you can make edits, adjustments to the job description that will point you in the direction of that person becoming better, becoming more effective, and meeting the needs of the congregation.
Mm.
Okay. That's a critical part of the evaluation process that sometimes gets left out. Okay.
Wow.
That we oftentimes, if when there is an evaluation, it's most of the time solely on the person. But I think an important factor to consider is this person's leadership meeting the needs of the congregation?
Right.
Okay. And are they effectively not only serving the worship and arts ministry, but meeting the needs of the folks that are sitting in the pews?
Right. Right. Man, you've helped us tonight, and I have, the whole part about, and Dr. Weeder also mentioned it, the whole part about vision for music ministry, and then tagging it with a job description. How many
Yeah.
ills can that cure?
Yeah. Yeah. We got to write it down. We got to
Right.
write it down. And gone are the days, in my opinion, that you should be hiring people, especially someone that is going to be over the sacred task of worship.
Right.
That is at the heart of who the church is.
Mm-hmm.
So we should not be so haphazard and lackluster and lackadaisical about who gets to sit in that position.
Right.
And for me, worship leadership is a pastoral call.
Right.
So I hold the standard of searching and recruiting and hiring music ministers and worship pastors to the same standard that churches use when they hire a senior pastor.
Mm.
What if we use the same intensity and same intentionality and same commitment in hiring our worship leaders as we do our senior pastors? That would transform how we look at worship as a ministry.
And not just hire, if you're not in a position to hire, but you have volunteers or people who say that this is what they do,
Yes,
they need to be evaluated as well.
absolutely.
I mean, we're seeing videos every day of worship going wrong because nobody's doing they just allowing anybody to have a influence. I won't even say it's sacred because it's a fine line between sacred and manipulation, especially when you have the microphone in your hand. And and you can use certain melodies and things like that to to get people to do certain things. So who you have in that you hit it's the nail on the head. Who you have in that position has power.
Yeah. And to me, in the context of corporate worship, the worship pastor or the minister of music becomes the assistant pastor.
Right.
In corporate worship.
Right.
Because depending on the song, even a chord can send worship into left or right field.
Right.
Okay? That's a lot of power. That's a lot of influence.
Right.
That can be used to enhance worship, and also it can be used to manipulate worship.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So we should not take it for granted that all ministers of music come with a pastor's heart or a pastoral heart.
Right.
Some just want to play.
Right. And
Some
you
just
should
want
let
to
them.
come and shout people. Yes,
Right.
some people want to come and shout people and make sure the church has a good time and everybody leaves high in the spirit, and that's it. They're not concerned with the overall growth, spiritual growth, and spiritual formation of the congregation.
Mm-hmm.
But if that is a value to the church, then that will be reflected in the job description. Okay?
Right.
Some churches may say we don't want to. We want just somebody to come and play. That's all we want. We don't want them to develop a ministry. We don't want them to do all of that spiritual and theological stuff. That's a value statement.
That's
Okay?
correct.
And so that will be reflected in the job description, or should be.
Right. Right.
Okay? But if you want somebody to come and not only be concerned with the music and the performance aspect of worship, but also to nurture the congregation theologically,
Mm-hmm.
and see worship as a tool for spiritual formation, then your job description has got to talk like that.
Right. Right. Man, you have helped us tonight in so many ways. I hope you all have been writing down, taking notes, and I hope that if you are in need, that you will make that phone call to Dr. Tony McNeill and retain his services. I would love to see more of you pastors or ministers of music being interviewed, and so that we can see who you are, and you and praying and believing that through those processes and things like that, that God will honor that and send you who is needed for the people that you serve. So Dr. McNeill, once again, I want to thank you. You have an open door policy with Philip Carter. You just need to know that. So if there's if there's anything that in terms of this area that you need to push or promote, you're always welcome. So I appreciate you.
Thank you for having me, Philip, and thank everybody for joining the broadcast. And I again want to affirm you and thank you for the witness that you and your wife have through the various platforms that you have, and how you have served and blessed the church through hymns broadcast, your devotions, and all the things that the worship education that you are providing through this platform, through this interview tonight, and other things that you continue to do. This is helping the church, sir. And
Praise
so I
God.
celebrate you and your wife and the commitment that you all have made to make this available to us. So thank you, Philip Carter.
Thank you, and to God be the glory. And with that being said, we bid you all a good night, and we ask once again that you would like and share, tag someone even while this broadcast, tell them to go back and watch it. We're on Facebook, YouTube. This was even aired on LinkedIn tonight. So we're all over the place. Go ahead and share it with somebody. It will live. And the more you share with people who are in need, the better off we will be in the church. In Jesus' name. You all take care. Have a good night, everybody.
Good night, everybody.